Welcome to episode 41 of the Growing Space podcast. In today's episode, we are going to talk all about harvesting summer vegetables. It's officially July. Happy July. And I am sure your spaces are just full and cranking out some summer vegetables. When it comes time to harvest, this is one of the most exciting things that we get to do with the plants that we're growing at home that we get to eat, obviously, is harvest the fruits of our labor and enjoy them, fill our bellies with delicious homegrown produce. So in today's episode, I am going to go through different summer crops. So we're mainly going to be talking about plants that produce a flower and then a fruit from that flower, and the fruit is the part of the plant that we eat. But I do have some herbs, some common summer herbs tucked into this episode, as well as some flowers. This episode also has a companion piece called The Summer Vegetable Harvest Guide by me, the Patio Farmer. You're welcome. Yep, it's ready for you. So I will be sure to link this in the show notes for you today. This is a digital downloadable tool. You just use the link to purchase the guide, and you'll be able to download it immediately. And it'll walk you through, with written instruction, these different crops that we're going to discuss in today's episode. So today's episode is really going to give you a high-level overview and some maybe more like exclusive tips or elaborations on what all is in the digital guide. And then the digital guide is really to your benefit to have, at your fingertips to reference as you are out interacting with your plants and considering harvesting. So that is the focus for today's episode. You guys, let's go ahead and jump in, get started talking about harvesting summer veggies. Welcome to the Growing Space podcast. I'm your host, Farmer Erin, owner of the Patio Farmer, and I believe that no matter what size space you have, you can grow food at home. Tune in every Tuesday as I share my best tips, tricks, and encouragement for tending to homegrown edible plants. I'm here to support your food growing journey. The Growing Space podcast is sponsored by Plant Club by the Patio Farmer. Plant Club by the Patio Farmer is a monthly subscription service I started in 2020. It's a membership-based opportunity to take your growing journey to the next level. With 4 different membership options, you get to decide the amount and kind of support that's right for you. All Plant Club members receive access to my online community through a platform called Circle. Having access to this platform allows members to share pictures, ask questions, celebrate harvest, and get to know each other. All Plant Club members also have access to free seeds each month, along with information on how to plant and tend to their crops, with seeding instructions and downloadable resources from the Patio Farmers Resource Library. Membership starts at just $14 a month. Join Plant Club today by visiting my website, thepatiofarmer.com/membership. We have basil, cucumber, dill, eggplant, green beans, okra, peppers, summer squash / zucchini, sunflowers, tomatoes, and watermelon. So that's what we're going to go through today. Again, I'm going to give you high-level harvest tips for all of those different crops. And then you have the option to purchase the guide as well if you would like, which I would highly suggest because there's even more information tucked into that guide for each of these crops. And on each page for each crop, there are tending notes, so specific maintenance tips for how to keep your plants nice and healthy and productive for you throughout the summer season, which is always a top priority of mine. I feel like in the summer, it's all about plant health and then production, which leads to harvest, right? So there's some tending notes on each page for each crop, and then storage notes as well. So what do you do with your veggies, with your herbs, with your flowers once you harvest them before you eat them? right? How do you store them? And tips, about how long do they last after you harvest, and other tips for preserving your harvest. So that's what you can expect on each page is just a breakdown of tending notes, harvest notes, and storage notes for each of these vegetables. Sound good? Like I said, that link for the full harvest guide, the summer vegetable harvest guide, will be in today's show notes. So be sure to take a look there. Also, if you're interested in more plant care and plant supervision, be sure to check the show notes today. I'm tucking in a little spoiler to something that's coming up later this summer, but I'm going to go ahead and include it here. And it has to do with my masterclass. So if you remember me talking about my masterclass earlier in the spring, I launched it on the spring equinox this year, earlier in March, and it walks you through the 6 S's to success for growing food at home. The last S, the 6th S to success, is supervision. And the 5th S is seed. And I had this idea to separate out the masterclass into smaller chunks of information. And so I am sharing a link. This is like top secret. I haven't shared this with anyone else except for you guys because you're special. Thanks for tuning into the podcast. But I have started kind of dividing up the masterclass into smaller chunks of information. So if you're interested in learning more about supervision and growing things from seed or seedling, be sure to check that link as well for a little sneak peek from me, Farmer Erin. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in and talk about the first crop today, and that is basil. Now, if you're like me, it's just not summertime until you've smelled fresh basil, until you've eaten fresh basil. Basil is such a wonderful crop to enjoy throughout the summer season. Now, basil, we eat the leaves of, right? So this is not something that we eat the fruits of. The way that I like to harvest basil, and this goes for any leafy green that I harvest. First of all, I try not to remove more than 30% of the plant at any single harvest. You take a quick scan of your plant and you make a mental note about how much volume of leaves you have. And then I try to harvest generally under a third of that volume. You will notice on your basil that the largest leaves tend to be the ones on the outside of the plant and lower down on the plant. And that's where I like to start with my harvesting. Those are going to be your older leaves, your more mature leaves. So I always start with the bottom leaves towards the outside of the plant, and I work my way in and up into the plant. So with basil, you can harvest individual leaves if you would like. You can also harvest entire stalks. If you have a sharp pair of harvest snips or pruners, just get in there. You can take a whole stalk off of the plant at a time. Just cut right at the very base of the stalk. Don't leave a little nub because that will tell the plant that it needs to send energy there. But if it sends energy there, it's not going to be super productive for you. That is how I would harvest basil. Now, I will give a little spoiler for the storage notes in the harvest guide here. When you harvest basil, don't put it in the fridge. Don't put your harvested basil leaves in the fridge. Our basil leaves are sensitive to moisture and temperature changes. So if you put basil in the refrigerator, that can just lead to discoloration of leaves and kind of more of a wilted texture, which is not great. So in the harvest guide, I do have some tips for how you can harvest basil ahead of time and keep it nice and perky and happy and fresh for when you're ready to eat it. Okay, moving on. Cucumber. I just find them so endearing, especially this time of year. It's like mid-season for cucumbers. They're starting to produce. We're starting to harvest fruits. And I think my favorite part about the cucumber plant are their little tendrils that they send out. Have you ever seen those before? I mean, if you're growing cucumbers, then you definitely have seen tendrils before. So the cucumber tendrils are those cute light green, spindly little appendages that come out from underneath the cucumber vines. And they are what reaches out into the world to find something to grab onto. Right. And then they like coil around whatever they can find to hold on to help guide the plant. Now, sometimes the tendrils beetles can be kind of frustrating, especially if they're latching on to a neighbor pepper plant, for example. But if you break off a tendril, it's not going to hurt the plant. It's literally just there as a guide and as a convenience to grab on and pull the vine in a certain direction. So when it comes to harvesting your cucumbers, different varieties will have different specifications. You know, if you're growing a traditional slicer cucumber, you're looking for a fruit that's somewhere between 8 and 12 inches long. If you're growing pickling cucumbers, depending on the variety, you can harvest those anywhere between 2 and 6 inches. If you're growing lemon cucumbers, if you've never seen a lemon cucumber, it is absolutely adorable. It's like a perfect little sphere, and it's yellow. Those you usually want to harvest when they're about 4 inches in diameter all the way around. Let's see, who else? Oh, like a long Asian cucumber or European cucumber, English cucumber. Those you're looking at 10 to 14, 16 inches long, right? Those are very long fruits. So it will depend on the variety. A pro tip or just a suggestion whenever you're planting or sowing cucumbers, if you're sowing cucumbers in particular, you can look at the packet of seed and it should give you a little description of the fruit and when you should expect to be able to harvest it. You know, give you a days to maturity window that you can kind of set a countdown for if you want, or at least the description will tell you about how big the fruit will be when it's ready. Now, when you go to harvest cucumbers, one way to know that the fruit is ready is that it should release from the vine fairly easily, like just with a little tug, a little pull. If it's giving you a lot of resistance or you don't feel comfortable pulling it and you're a little on the fence about the size, you can just leave it on the plant for just a couple more days and then come back to it. Now, something about cucumbers that really surprised me when I first started growing them is how spiky they are. I mean, not just the vines, because the vines will scratch you, but the cucumbers themselves have all of these little spikes on them. Don't be alarmed if you're harvesting your cucumbers and this is the first time you're growing cucumbers and they have little spikes on them. Once you harvest those, you can just take a paper towel and rub off those spikes. They come right off. I'm sure it's some kind of defense mechanism against pests, but don't be alarmed if your cucumbers have spikes on them and you're like, what is going on? It's okay. Totally fine. Okay. The third crop is dill, also an herb. Dill likes the warmer months, but not the super hot months. So usually by this time, by early July, you might find that your dill has gone to seed, which is exciting because now you either get to eat dill flower. One of my favorite things to do with dill flower is to shove it in the bottom of a pickle jar if you're making homemade pickles, and it's beautiful in the jar. So if your dill is going to seed right now, don't worry. There's still plenty of things that you can do with it. They're like little sprays of fireworks. That's what I think of when I see dill flowers. But dill is a great kind of end of cool season, beginning of warm season herb. There's two main varieties or two main types of dill plants. So one type of dill has a fern leaf habit, meaning you tend to get more of the leafy fronds and greens from the dill versus the flowers. I mean, it will flower at some point, but the plant will first focus on giving you a long window of fronds to harvest, which is great. The other variety is more of a bouquet variety. This variety will give you those leafy fronds, but then it will go to seed, and then you'll have lots of dill seed. So just something to keep in mind, depending on which part of the dill you're really after, might help dictate which variety you want to grow. So harvesting the flowers, harvesting the seed, once they flower, you can just snip the whole flower from the base. Obviously, when you harvest the flower, you won't be able to harvest the seed. Keep that in mind. If you are interested in harvesting dill seed, you want to let those flower heads dry completely out on the plant. And then you'll see the seeds right at the top where the blooms were. And then you can cut the flower once it has dried out and shake the seeds from the flour into a paper bag, and ta-da, you have fresh dill seed, which you can also add to a pickle jar or save to flavor any dish. Then, if you are interested in harvesting the greens or the fronds of your dill, you want to wait until your plants have grown to be about 18 inches tall and that you have, 4 to 5 stalks of dill growing on the plant. Same rules apply when you're harvesting dill leaves as when you're harvesting basil. You want to try not to remove more than 30% of the plant at any one harvest. Now, something fun to know about dill, just a little heads up, especially if you have it in your summer growing space this year, is that there's a special little relationship that dill has with the swallowtail butterfly. You may also see this happen on your parsley, or if you have any carrots left, or fennel. Fennel is also related to carrots, dill, and parsley. But the swallowtail butterfly baby, or the cute little caterpillar, likes to munch on dill. So if you see a cute lime green, bright yellow, black and white striped caterpillar on your dill, don't be alarmed. Don't treat for it. Don't remove it. Don't kill it. It's a baby butterfly. Swallowtail butterfly to boot. So embrace sharing your dill, sharing your herbs with those little babies. Yeah, precious. I always get so excited when I see them. I'm like, oh, yay, you're here. Welcome, welcome. Eat the dill. It's okay. No big deal. Get it? No big deal. Okay, well, moving right along, let's talk about eggplant. Eggplants are one of my favorite plants to watch grow. I love watching their purple flowers form in early summer, and then I love watching those deep, dark purple. Sometimes they're light purple or like a lilac, but those deep purple fruits form. It's just so exciting to watch. When you are harvesting your eggplant, if you're growing a traditional Italian eggplant, you're looking for a fruit that's somewhere between 8 to 12 inches long. If you are harvesting more of an elongated Japanese eggplant or Asian eggplant variety, you want the fruit to be somewhere between 10 and 16 inches long. It's always good to use harvest shears or a harvest knife to harvest your eggplant. The plants tend to be fragile. The fruit is heavy, and trying to pull the eggplant from the fruit can sometimes tear the plant and reduce your future harvests. So if you have a pair of harvest snips, harvest shears, it would be great to use those for harvesting your eggplant. Next up, we have green beans. Oh, I love green beans, and spoiler, we are talking all about green beans this month in Plant Club. So if you are interested in doing a deep dive on green beans, then I would encourage you to check the link in the show notes today and consider joining Plant Club by me, the Patio Farmer, at one of the 4 levels that I have available. Membership starts at just $14 a month. But if you are interested in doing the deep dive on green beans, you'll want to join at either the No, which is $29 a month, Grow, which is $65 a month, and the Grow level includes a grow kit. So you actually get the supplies you need to grow these green beans from me, a special little curated box of goodies, or you can join at the Wow level. The Wow level is best for people who live in the Charlotte area, in my main service area. So I'll just give a little shout out there. But grow kits are shipped now. I used to hand deliver all of these, and now I ship them out. So if you are joining anywhere in the contiguous 48 states, you can join Plant Club Grow, and you will get a grow kit. But anyone in the world, no matter where you are, can join Plant Club at the No level, which is the second level, $29 a month. And you'll get all of the information and guidance about growing green beans at home from seed, why they're so magical, why they're perfect to grow in July. And in Plant Club this month, we are also spending a little time talking about hydration, best practices for watering, and how to keep your plants supported through our warmest season, summer, the warmest months of the year. July, hello, you are here. We are excited to welcome you. But all of those goodies are tucked into Plant Club membership. We'll go through how to harvest them, how to tend to green beans, all of that fun stuff. Oh, and I should also mention that the Summer Vegetable Harvest Guide is included with Plant Club membership. So this resource is available as a single purchase for non-members, but for members, it is included in my resource library, which is exclusive only to Plant Club members, and it's available for you there. So there you go. If you're like, oh, I would love to learn about green beans, and oh, I would love to have this harvest guide. Plant Club, it's for you this month. Join Plant Club. You won't regret it. I have a lot of fun. It's a great membership. Not that I'm biased. Anyway, join Plant Club. Okay, going on to okra. Oh, okra. I love okra. I know this can be kind of a divisive summer vegetable, but I love okra so much. And, we talked about okra in last week's episode when I was talking about the Malvaceae plant family, or the mallow family, because okra is one of the main edible members of that plant family. So if you want to learn more about growing okra at home, be sure to go back and listen to last week's episode. That's episode 40. It's titled Meet the Plant Families, and it's all about the mallows, the morning glories, and the ginger plant families. So give that a listen if you want to learn more about growing okra. Now, when it comes to harvesting okra, I have to give this disclaimer. Whenever you're going to harvest okra, be sure to cover your hands, to cover your arms. So okra has this sticky sap kind of all over the plant, and it can react with your skin and make your skin super duper itchy. So just be mindful of that when you are harvesting your okra. I try to get in there, harvest all the pods that are ready, and then get out, because it is really frustrating to interact with that sticky sap. Another thing to keep in mind when you're harvesting okra is you want to harvest those pods when they are small, when they are young. You want 3 to 5 inch long pods. The smaller the fruit is, the more tender the pods are going to be. It's not going to be as woody or as fibrous. Once those pods get over 6-8 inches long, they turn super hard, super tough. Yeah. And you could probably use it to kill a vampire, honestly. If you're growing okra, you want to keep an eye on those plants. You want to check them every day. And when you see pods that are 3 to 5 inches long, harvest them and just keep a little bowl in your refrigerator and store up a stash of okra pods that are nice and tender for your next summer meal featuring okra. I love okra. How do you like to eat okra? I would love to know. Share it in the comments. There is a restaurant here in Charlotte. Oh, and that's something I need to go ahead and mention. I like to mention this in every episode. I am based in Charlotte, North Carolina. We are the USDA Agricultural Zone 8A. If you do not know your agricultural zone or your hardiness zone, I will put a link in today's show notes so that you can find what your hardiness zone is. But here in Charlotte, in North Carolina, Southeast, okra is huge. We love our okra. And there was a restaurant, they don't have this on the menu anymore, which makes me really sad. But they used to have a roasted okra with bacon jam. Oh my gosh. It was so good. Super salty meal, but 100% worth it. All right. Peppers. Let's talk about it. Peppers are, I would say harvesting peppers is very similar to harvesting eggplant in that you want to be less inclined to pull the fruit off of the plant and more inclined to use snips or shears when you go to remove the fruit from the plant. There are tons of different varieties of peppers. You have hot peppers, you have sweet peppers, you have bell peppers, you have like smoky, slightly spicy peppers. There's a different size, some are big, some are small, some are teeny, teeny, tiny. So just be sure you know what varieties you're growing and what they look like when they are fully mature. Get a quick description and keep that in your mind as you are getting ready to harvest your peppers. Now, something to know about peppers, because I get asked this quite frequently. All pepper fruits turn green first, or most of them. Most peppers will turn green first, and then when they are fully ripe, they turn a different color other than green. For the most part. I mean, jalapenos, they're green when we harvest them. But a bell pepper, if you want a green bell pepper, you harvest it before it turns color. But most green peppers will turn either red, yellow, or orange when they are fully mature. That's why the flavor profiles are different between green peppers and a different colored pepper, and why people usually say that non-green bell pepper is sweeter than a green pepper, because the plant has given the fruit time to develop all of those delicious sugars. So make sure you also know the color of the pepper when it is fully ripe, fully mature, if that's what you are looking for. So that's just a little tip, little insight for you there. Now, talking about summer squash and zucchini. So there's a handful of different varieties of summer squash and zucchini. And typically, if you're harvesting like an elongated squash, you want to harvest when the fruit is between 6 and 12 inches. You can definitely harvest squash when they are babies, when they're just little teeny tiny, like almost the size of your index finger. You can harvest them at that stage too. They are delicious on the grill, if I do say so myself. You can also harvest squash like I did last week. Oh my gosh. For some reason, somehow a zucchini escaped my gaze, maybe a day or two longer than what was ideal. And I harvested the zucchini, and no joke, it was bigger than my forearm. It's crazy. It's huge. But I just sliced it up and I roasted it with some salt, pepper, olive oil, roasted the whole thing. Had enough for 2 dinners. So it was great. So typically the smaller the squash, the more tender the fruit and the skin is. I like to shoot for somewhere between 6 and 12 inches. Again, depending on the variety, just know your varieties of squash and zucchini and what their ideal harvest size is and harvest appearance is. That'll be really helpful. One other thing about harvesting summer squash and zucchini is you can harvest the squash blossoms. Yeah, those flowers that form, you can harvest those. But if you are going to harvest your squash blossoms, try to only take the female flowers, and those are going to be the flowers that show up on the non-stem end of your fruit. So if you see those, harvest them, make something tasty with your squash blossoms. You can impress your next dinner party guests with something really beautiful with your squash blossoms. Moving on to sunflower. So I love sunflowers. These are my favorite flowers, which is why I included them here. They also love growing in the summer, so it just felt super appropriate. All sunflower seeds are edible. Yep. So, you can harvest your sunflowers for cut flowers. Once they dry out, you can harvest the seeds. You can roast them up, make something nice and tasty, a little snack. And yeah, I mean, if you are harvesting your sunflowers as a cut flower, you just want to make sure that you give yourself enough stem to put in a vase. If you are harvesting them primarily for seeds, you want to wait until that head gets super mature and you can see the seeds in the sunflower head. And then you want to cut it probably. I would cut the stem probably as long as you would if you were going to use them as cut flowers in a vase. But instead, if you're trying to focus on harvesting the seeds, then you can bunch them up bunch up the stems and tie them up with string and hang them upside down somewhere that is cool and dark. Maybe leave them there for a month or so until they've fully dried out. And then you can massage those seeds and release those seeds to use however you'd like. And they're dried. So sunflowers, they're beautiful. I love them. I like growing dwarf sunflowers at home. They're great for smaller spaces. And I like to use them as perimeter border plants for my raised beds. They're really pretty. And because they're dwarf, they're short, they only get 2 feet tall. They don't block a lot of sunlight from my other plants, which I am also thankful for. So sunflowers, they're so pretty and cheerful and wonderful. Oh boy, here we go. The big tomato. Also, it's not summer until you've eaten a fresh tomato that you grew yourself at home. I love tomatoes. I'm obsessed. So my number one tip for harvesting tomatoes, and this will be especially pertinent for those of you who have spaces that are frequently visited by squirrels or birds, is that you can harvest your tomatoes as soon as they start to blush, which sounds really sweet. But once they start to blush, they are starting to show color on the bottom. They're starting to ripen from the bottom up. But as soon as they show that color, that's an indication that there's a chemical reaction happening in the fruit. And that chemical reaction will continue to spread throughout the fruit in time. But the chemical reaction also increases the amount of sugars that are stored in the fruit, which can attract birds and squirrels. Mainly the sugars attract the squirrels, and then as the fruit starts to turn red, birds are attracted to the color red, which is why you might see them enjoying your fruits before you get to. But you can harvest your tomatoes anytime you see that color start to show up on the bottom of the fruit, and you can leave them on your kitchen counter on their shoulders. So on the other end that's not starting to ripen, you flip them upside down and you can store them on their shoulders to fully ripen, and you can enjoy them. You can also let them ripen on the plant. But again, if you have issues with birds and squirrels, go ahead and harvest them ahead of time. And finally, we have watermelon. Watermelon, how refreshing. Some watermelons grow to be 2 pounds, some grow to be 50 pounds. They do take a long time to mature because there's a lot of energy that goes from the plant into producing those massive fruits, relatively massive or truly massive if you're getting a 50-pound watermelon. Just make sure that you know how big of a melon you're looking for. And then there's all sorts of resources out there, and I'll try to find one and link it in today's show notes for the different size, different spots that you might see on your watermelon, how it releases from the plant, the noises that it makes when it's ready. So there's all different techniques and suggestions for knowing when your watermelon is ready to harvest. One tip as you are growing your melons, actually 2 tips. 2 tips for even ripening of your watermelons is to turn the fruits, maybe once a week, just turn them so that the sun is able to hit all sides of the melon. The sun helps the fruit to ripen. So if you can evenly have the sun hitting the fruit on all sides, that can be helpful. And, these big, heavy fruits are usually growing along the ground where there's moisture, where there's bugs, where there's all sorts of wonderful elements of the ecosystem. So sometimes if you put like a aluminum pie pan or even a paper plate underneath the melon that's growing, so it's in between the melon and the soil, that can help to prevent bruising and prevent rotting. A little fun tip for watermelon. And that's it, you guys. That wraps up the Summer Vegetable Harvest Guide intro and a little bit more elaboration on the information that's tucked into the harvest guide. There's even more information, like I mentioned at the top of this episode, that's in the harvest guide that I did not touch on for all of these summer crops. And if you're interested in purchasing this digital resource, there's a link in the show notes that will take you there. In next week's episode, I am going to give you a little tour of the bag of supplies that I keep in my truck whenever I am leaving for maintenance visits with clients. And these are things that I also keep at home whenever I'm tending to my own space. So different things for pest and disease, different tools that I like to use, even things like plant food, minerals, soil supplements, things like that I always have with me this time of year. Never leave the house without them. Well, except on the weekends. But whenever I'm going to see a client, these will be the things that I have with me. So be sure to tune in next week if you want to hear all about the different tools and products that I use all the time. So that will be the focus for next week, continuing marching through the summer months, the summer weeks. And speaking of summer, last week I gave a little intro, a little teaser for the Patio Farmers Summer Diaries. So this is a seasonal offering that I'm doing. There's a one-time access fee of $15 to unlock this content. This is also included with Plant Club membership. If you needed yet another reason to join Plant Club, there you go. You get this content no matter what level you join at. But the Patio Farmer Summer Diaries, I'm so excited for that. Yesterday, I shared the second week of this series with all of those who are subscribed. But basically, every week throughout summer, so until mid-September, I am going to be sharing a video tour of my growing space every week. And I am also writing up a little blog post. Again, this is just for the subscribers to this content, and it's all shared through my online community on Circle. So if you are interested, I will put a link in the show notes for that as well. Okay, and if you have listened to this podcast in the past, then you'll know that at the end of every episode, I like to close out with a little tidbit, a little morsel of information. This month, actually, I am celebrating my business birthday. Well, I know. July is always an exciting month for me. It's a milestone month. And every year I get to celebrate another year of being in business. So there's another year of being the patio farmer. And this year is year 7, marks 7 years of being in business. It's crazy. It's crazy how fast time flies. But there you go. That is my fun little fact for you as we sign off. I do have some special podcast episodes planned for later this month for celebrating my business birthday, some interviews that I have done. So yeah, stay tuned for that. I will see you back here next week to go through my summer supply bag and all of the resources and tools that I keep tucked in there. Okay. In the meantime, happy growing, happy harvesting, and yeah, enjoy the season. Thanks again for tuning into this week's episode of the Growing Space Podcast. I hope that you learned something new and that you were able to take this new information home with you and implement into your growing journey and into your growing space. As always, I am here to support you and your food growing journey. If you'd like to learn more about the different services and resources and membership programs that I run through the Patio Farmer, please check out my website, thepatiofarmer.com. You can also follow me on social media. I am on Facebook, Instagram, and oh my gosh, most recently, TikTok. Wow. I know. Here I am. Patio Farmer is on TikTok. It's very exciting. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give it a like or a rating or a review if you want. Maybe share a little comment about your favorite part of the episode. Share it with a friend. The more interactions I get with my little podcast online, the more I'm able to help people just like you in their food growing journeys. As always, thanks for being here, and I will see you again next week.